Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is SUZANA FARISHA binti SUKRI. My metric numbers is 053560 and I am from TESOL 5C. So I will begin this presentation with the general overview of assessing vocabulary. So first of all, vocabulary assessment is really important for language teachers and learners, and in most cases, teachers should test vocabulary that they expect their students to learn. In addition, vocabulary assessment will help teachers to get information on how much vocab learning has taken place in class, whether the teaching has been effective or not. So now we will move on to the types of vocabulary assessment. So the first type of vocabulary assessment is formal versus informal vocabulary assessment. For formal vocabulary assessment, it refers to the tests that are standardized and have been designed in such a way that reliability and validity are ensured. It also includes achievement tests that is typically administered at the end of the course and is designed to measure whether words taught have been successfully learned or not. Next, informal vocabulary assessment, at the other hand, are not usually standardized and are typically done as a formative test or progress check to see if students have made a progress in learning specific words that we want them to learn. So the next types of vocabulary assessment is discrete versus embedded vocabulary assessment. In discrete vocabulary assessment, vocabulary is measured as a test on its own right. Some examples for discrete vocabulary assessment are multiple choice questions, sentence completion or gap fill items, and translation. While embedded vocabulary assessment happens when a test of vocabulary forms a larger part of a construct. Some examples in embedded vocabulary assessment are assessing vocab in reading comprehension, assessing vocab in writing, and also assessing vocab in speaking. So the next types of vocabulary assessment is selective versus comprehensive vocabulary assessment. Selective vocabulary assessment happens when certain words are selected as the basis of vocabulary measurement. It can be found typically in most conventional vocabulary tests where the test designers select the words to be tested in the assessment, such as those found in TOEFL reading comprehension tests. So, comprehensive vocabulary assessment examines all the words that are spoken or written by the candidates. It is typically found on a speaking or writing test where the examiners judge the overall quality of the words rather than looking specifically on some words. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Puteri ALIAH binti RAHMAN from TESOL 5C. My matrix number is 053463. So I will continue with the types of vocabulary assessment. The other three types are context independent versus context dependent, receptive versus productive, and size versus depth. So I will start with context dependent versus context independent. Okay, so what does it mean by context dependent and context independent? When it makes use the context in order for the test takers to give the appropriate answer, it is called context dependent. So to correctly answer a context dependent, you have to understand the sentence or description. Okay, look at the context dependence example. The girl collects a handful of marbles and put them in a small jar. So the correct answer is C, gathers. As you can see, all choices represent a possible definition of the word collects. In order to know which options is the closest synonym to the word, you must to refer to the sentence and use the available context there. Okay, so what about context independent? So it is when the words are not presented in a sentence or a description. For instance, what does the word downfall means? Loss of power, close to the ground, or lower intensity? The correct answer is A. Loss of power. As you can see, it simply presents a word as an isolated element. Thus, this dimension has more to do with the need to engage with context to derive a meaning than simply how the word is presented. Now, let's move on to receptive versus productive. Okay, so basically, receptive vocabulary is the vocab needed to comprehend. For example, when you are reading a word in a text, you can understand it. Means that you are able to recognize the word and comprehend the word and retrieve its meaning. Meanwhile, productive vocabulary uses when learners use it in writing or speaking. For instance, when you are writing an essay, you are able to use a word in your writing. Literally, you are able to recall a word and use it correctly. That is productive vocabulary. Another distinction to make in vocabulary assessment is size versus depth. Size is an estimate of the number of words known by the learner as in the vocabulary level test. And depth is measures of how well the learner knows useful words. You can look at the mind map. So vocabulary depth is generally understood that knowing a word that does not simply entail knowing its precision of meaning, but other aspects as well, such as its pronunciation, part of speech, syntax, semantic, and morphological changes. In a word, size of vocabulary refers to the amount of vocabulary a learner has, while the depth is the quality of these words. So, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is BINTI MUHAMAD SAIFUNAZIM ISKANDAR. My metric number is 053589 and I am from Tehsil 5C. So I will continue the presentation. I will explain about the example of vocabulary assessment. Okay. As the previous presentation, there are two types of vocabulary assessment: discrete vocabulary and embedded vocabulary. Okay, so for discrete vocabulary, the examples are multiple choice question format, which the question will have A, B, and C, A, B, C, and D. And you will have to choose which one is the correct answer. Okay, second is matching formats. Okay, matching format. For instance, the question will provide pictures and words, and you have to match it. Okay. Third is fill in the blank. They will give words. They will give sentence without words, and you have to choose which is the correct words to complete the sentence. The last one is translation. You have to translate the words into your mother tongue. Okay. So next is embedded vocabulary. Okay. Embedded vocabulary. The first one is assessing vocabulary in reading comprehension, assessing vocabulary in writing, and assessing vocabulary in speaking. Okay, I will explain about the assessing vocabulary in reading comprehension. It is based on the text given, so the student have to read and understand and answer the question based on the text. Second is assessing vocabulary in writing. Assessing vocabulary in writing. The example of this is the question will provide a vocab from the text, and you have to whether write a story or write a sentence based on the vocabulary. Last but not least, assessing vocabulary in speaking. This you can do games like role play to assess their vocabulary in speaking. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is SHARIFAH SHAZLEEN binti BAKRI and my metric number is 053537. So these are the challenges and problems when assessing the students' vocabulary. So the first one is having difficulties in estimate the size of the student's vocabulary. How many words does a student know? The second one is it is also difficult to decide which word to put or include in their exam questions. And the third one is to decide what is the criterion for knowing a word. And last but not least, certain tests do not give valid and reliable results. So that's all from my part. Thank you.